There is a starvation going on in Gaza, and there are children that are dying as we speak. And we have been doing multiple events here. Today's event specifically is in the memory of those children who have been starved and died and are continuously going to be dead until we do something about it. So we have a little gathering here to remind everyone that we have a responsibility in this country that we're living. There is a action needed by the government of Canada to stop shipping arms to Israel and to do its leverage to open borders so the humanitarian aid can flow into the region of Gaza where starving children desperately need it.
Today, Amnesty International Quinte has joined Belleville for Justice and Peace in organizing this vigil. Just a few words regarding Amnesty International's work. And these are their words.
One second.
And these are their words. For over 21 months, the world has watched in horror as the people of Gaza endure unspeakable suffering. Entire families have been wiped out, homes and neighborhoods flattened, food and water have become luxuries. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is not only ongoing, it's escalating rapidly. Gaza has become the largest graveyard on earth. Entire families have been wiped out, cities reduced to rubble, and children left to starve under a brutal siege. This is a genocide, yet world leaders are watching without taking serious action to stop it. Right now, Palestinians in Gaza, especially children, are starving. Food, clean water, fuel, and essential medical supplies are blocked from reaching families who desperately need them. At last count, 193 people died of hunger, 96 children among this number. And we are not even talking about the bottom. Documents war crimes and verifies evidence of human rights violations. Amnesty International has not given his name for the safety of him and his family. This is what he says. We had to leave our home in October 2023. When there was a ceasefire in Gaza, we returned to our home in the north. We returned on 8 February 2024. I think it's 2024, no, 2025. But we were more afraid than happy, afraid that our home might have been completely destroyed. Thankfully, it was still standing, though there were some shells that had hit the front of the house and burn marks on the walls. But inside, there was no furniture. None of the clothes we had left behind when we were displaced in October 23, not even kitchen tools remained. The house had been looted. Still, we stayed. We cleaned and repaired it, bought some basic furniture, adapted to the situation, and lived in it for 3 months. We struggled to secure drinking water, but at least during the ceasefire, we were not waiting for death. The truce was broken, and war came back again to claim what remained of our souls. By then, the crossings had been closed, prices soared, and goods began to disappear, bit by bit. I planted some vegetables behind the house, like mint, pumpkin, chili peppers, eggplants, and basil, so they would be readily available. But we returned to the bigger struggle, hunger. There was no flour, no food, no food. Overnight, our life turned into hell. On 15 May, the Israeli military stormed our neighborhood and began indiscriminately shelling the area. We fled our home under gunfire and shelling, taking nothing with us. We ran into the street and wandered aimlessly down an unknown path. We realized we had returned to the worst suffering, displacement, and more hunger. The last words of this field worker: we are torn apart watching our children suffer from hunger. Last count, since the start of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, 1,568 were killed trying to get food, and 10,578 were injured. And it gets worse every day. We have to open the borders. And we are human, not Free Palestine. We are not looking at anything but human people. What we have lost is humanity. Thank you.
I'm a family doctor, mostly retired now. I worked in community health centers in Ontario most of my career. I spent some time in Nunavut. I have not worked in Gaza. I'm not one of those amazing volunteer docs or medics that have gone to Gaza, and I have not worked in other war zones either. The skills I've developed have mostly been around working with people in primary care, trying to do disease prevention, supporting people's health through their lifetime, working with chronic disease management, mental health kinds of things. The other part of my career, though, that I'm still involved in, and that's probably relevant, is since the 1980s, I've worked with the Canadian Centre for Victims of Torture in Toronto, and my role there has been to see people who have come from countries where they were detained, tortured, victims of war, violence, and they were seeking refugee status in Canada. And my job there is to talk to people about what happened, do a physical exam, document scars and injuries, come up with a medical report that gets used at refugee hearings to support the person when they're making their refugee claim. So I've seen hundreds of folks who've been through incredible things, and that experience definitely informs the way I see things. I'm going to just start by saying that there's a question for me about, I don't want my talk or all of our talk to just be a set of facts and numbers that in a way are more depressing and make us feel worse. We're all here because we're already feeling bad. And we're also feeling frustrated, a little bit helpless. I do think there's reason for some hope, because I think there is some rising groundswell within the Canadian population, perhaps even in our leaders from statements that they're saying that they are hearing what we're saying, that what Palestinians are saying. I think it's important for us to continue to be organized, put our voices together. We're small in Belleville, but we're part of a much bigger thing across the country and across the world. These large changes in people's thinking they only change when person by person we come out to things and make our voices heard. So don't think that you're small. Remember that your voice adds up. The other thing I think, and my son talked to me about this, and one of the things I've heard from people who've been detained, held in detention, concentration camps, that sort of thing, that people feel very, very isolated, very alone. They have no one to communicate with. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows what they're going through. It feels like nobody cares. And I think it's important through the videos that come out through these kind of events, and hopefully get promulgated on your social media. Okay. Hopefully some of this is getting back to people in Gaza, to people in the West Bank. Hopefully they can see that they are not alone. I hear them in interviews saying, where is the world? Where's the international community? How can this happen in 2025? And we kind of understand why that is, but we want them to at least feel that we hear them. Also, Palestinians in the diaspora, and not just Palestinians, people the world over who are discriminated against, who are treated as if their lives don't count because of the group that they're part of, because of their ethnicity, because of the color of their skin, their religion, their gender choices, all of these things. So it's very important. One of the things that we can learn through going through an experience like this together is to have a bigger vision of what justice means, of who justice counts for, who has the right to have rights, and who doesn't count. And I think that's very important. I'm going to also, I know many of you know, today's August the 6th. Today is the 80th anniversary of the first atomic bombing, the bombing of Hiroshima. First time a nuclear bomb was dropped on a population. And that day, probably 70,000 people were killed instantly. At least 60,000 of those people were civilians and not military. By the end of that year, probably 100 to 140,000 people had died because of that bombing. And you know, to me, that was a war crime. It was a crime to drop a weapon like that on a civilian population. You hear lots of rationalizations for it, but one of the things about crimes against humanity, the Geneva Conventions, all of those things, they're supposed to protect civilians in times of war and times of conflict. That's what we see completely broken down in Gaza. I'm going to mention one other contextual thing for us here as Canadians. Shahid made a land acknowledgement for us for Indigenous people who have long, for centuries and thousands of years, been the rightful holders and guardians of this land. And now we're here through steps of colonization, our own Canadian versions of genocide. One of the things, when I was getting ready for this event, you know, I just looked back to see, well, in what ways was starvation used against Indigenous people in Canada? And one of the things that I was reminded of, I'd seen this before, but because of the event we're having today, it stuck in my mind more than usual. And that was the level of malnourishment that was maintained in residential schools for Indigenous children in Canadian residential schools for decades and decades and decades. And it was reported, it was brought to the government's attention, but really nothing substantial was done about it for decades. And then perhaps even more disturbing, and it reflects badly on the scientific community, of which I'm a member. In the 1940s, when it was really brought to the government's attention, the levels of malnourishment of children in the residential schools, there were researchers who saw this as an opportunity to do scientific research on the effects of malnourishment. And they did experiments in some of the residential schools where they provided some children with enriched flour products or with certain kinds of vitamins and minerals, and then didn't improve the nutrition of the other children at all, and just used them as an experiment to see what would happen. It's an appalling chapter in a long, tragic, criminal story. If you're interested in seeing more about that story, I believe the researcher was a guy named Ian Mosby. He did his research from what's now the Metropolitan Toronto University. This research came out in 2013 about those practices, and you can look that up and find it. In my experience as a family doctor, when parents bring children and babies and children to the office because they're worried about something, there are a few what we call complaints in medicine. There are a few things that parents rightly worry about that they care a lot about, that are deeply upset to parents. One of them is a child in pain, obviously. One of them is a child who's struggling to breathe, clearly. But one that we see over and over is parents bringing in their child. My child is sick. My child's not eating. My child is losing weight. These are often we see this in situations that are temporary. We can be reassuring. We see it's a short-lived virus. The child recovers, the appetite recovers. But we all want to feed our children. We want to feed our babies. Sometimes that instinct is so strong that we overfeed them. Us grandparents can be guilty of that, right? Like, we just want to feed people. We want to see them eat. It makes us feel connected, that we're doing our part as caretakers. It's very distressing when a child can't eat or is losing weight and is sick in that way. So I'm saying that because I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to in the care of our own children, how we have felt when our own children were unable to eat. And I don't know if any of you have had the experience of not being able to provide food for your children. That is an incredibly distressing situation for a parent to be in, because that is a foundational part of your identity as a parent, that you will feed your child. Now, the other thing that we see all the time, we talk a lot about nutrition in medicine, right? If you come in with your diabetes or with your heart condition or your high blood pressure or this problem or that problem, we might talk to you about what's your diet, what's your nutrition like, what are you drinking? Are you drinking too many soft drinks? Whatever. Usually in Canada, we're in the situation where we're trying to subtract some things from that diet and add other positive things in, like more vegetables, less this or that. Anyways, we know how important nutrition is. We know how important nutrition is for our children's ability to learn. We have breakfast programs in schools developed to make sure that every child that arrives in school, like this is where these programs exist, they're very important programs, every child that shows up for school can start school with a full tummy and can pay attention and can learn and can participate in their relationships and their development with other children, with their teachers. If a child comes to school hungry, they can't learn. They're not going to develop. They may develop problematic behaviors and so on. We all know that. The other time in a child's life where nutrition is incredibly important, and I know that many of the women I'm seeing in the audience have probably been through being pregnant. When you're pregnant, you are very, very conscious of your nutrition, of what you're putting into your body. That's going directly to your baby and your baby's development. And you worry about that. You're concerned about that. You care about that. You're looking for the right things. This is another way we can relate to the women in Gaza who are pregnant, who have no choice about what's available to them, and are perhaps losing weight when they should be gaining weight, right? A lot of babies being born right now in Gaza are born underweight, and that's because their mothers were malnourished during the pregnancy. Now, the other time you, as a mother, very early on, need really good nutrition, feed your baby. When you want to breastfeed, you need extra calories. It takes energy to make milk. For you to make milk and pass that on to your baby, you need extra energy, you need the right kind of nutrition. If you can't get that, you're not going to have breast milk. And so for many places in the world where there's a lot of food insecurity or food scarcity, one of the ways mothers can still help their infants is through breastfeeding. But right now in Gaza, that's really, really very, very, very difficult. Now, can you formula feed your babies? Well, you can formula feed your babies if you can go to the store or the pharmacy and get formula. But right now, formula is being restricted in how much is coming into the Gaza area, right? So again, mothers are sometimes having to give their babies just water with a bit of sugar in it and so on. This is not nutrition. This baby is not going to develop properly or grow properly. So one of the things we know about famines and famines that have happened in many parts of the world, thankfully, the really large-scale famines have been going down in the last half century. There's lots of reasons for that. But this kind of famine that we're seeing in Gaza right now is hopefully not a pointer to future starvations. We are seeing things in Sudan, in Myanmar, that are also brutal in terms of the starvation of civilians, children, innocent people. Right now, in Gaza, about 1 out of 3 people are eating 1 meal a day. Parents are, of course, diverting food to their children and babies. You might see propaganda that suggests that babies and children are starving and dying first of malnutrition because their parents are choosing not to feed them and are just feeding them themselves. That's just unbelievable propaganda. We know from other famines across the world, we know why babies and children die first. Babies are the ones who need the most specialized types of nutrition. They need protein, they need nutrients to grow and develop. They need clean water for hydration. They are the ones who get dehydrated the fastest. What happens if a baby or a small child doesn't get the proper nutrition? Why do they die first in a famine? They die because they have very few fat reserves. They're very small. They burn up those reserves quickly. They also die because when you're being starved, your immune system's ability to fight infection goes down. And that happens especially for people who already have chronic illnesses that compromise their immunity, for the elderly. But it happens a lot for small children and for babies. Their immune systems take a large hit. And what you see historically in famines that have across the world, happened in various places across the world, one of the main causes of death during a famine is not a lack of nutrition and just straight starvation, lack of food. One of the main reasons that people die is from infectious diseases. They die of diarrhea. In parts of the world, they die because measles goes crazy. Other infections that normally children and babies would be able to fight off, they're unable to fight off. right now in Gaza, you have a situation where most people no longer have the protection of their own homes. They're living in crowded areas. Water sanitation is bad. So there's lots of deficits in the public health reason. Infections can spread very quickly. Diarrheal illnesses have been on the rise in Gaza. When you see numbers about how many children, how many people have starved or died of starvation, they're not very clear on who they're counting. It's actually very difficult for researchers to, when they're studying large famines in the past, it's very hard to decide exactly who has died because of the starvation, because of the famine, or have they died because they became weaker due to the famine and were not able to fight something else off. And then, so the cause of death might get listed as a diabetes crisis, but one of the main reasons why it happened now might have been the famine that was going on, the malnourishment that was going on. So when you see the numbers, you need to not necessarily question them. But you need to. They could easily be an underestimate. There could be a lot more people that are dying who wouldn't necessarily have died if they weren't in this weakened state. Now, the other thing that, of course, is happening in Gaza every day is that people are still suffering extremely violent injuries. They're still subjected to bombing, gunshot wounds, shrapnel, all these things. So what I'm hearing, and you're probably seeing too in interviews with doctors, with surgeons and emergency physicians, is there's a lot of cases where people come in, children, today we're talking about children, come in, they have a wound, the surgeon does a repair, but because of the conditions of the hospital, infection almost inevitably sets in. Because of the child's malnourished state, healing is very difficult. It's very difficult for wounds to knit up and heal up if there isn't proper protein and proper nutrition. If your hospital is too crowded, you have to send the child home. They're going home to a place where there isn't adequate nutrition. It isn't at the hospital. It isn't at the home. So, and kids are showing up anemic. So these are things to think about as well. The whole context, famine and starvation, is something that just makes every problem more complicated and worse. Now, the last thing I'm just going to mention to you, I don't want to talk to you for too long. One of the effects of starvation is not a physiological effect, but a social effect. When I talk to people who have been detained or held in what are essentially concentration camps, those kind of things, a lot of things are done to those folks that basically have a dehumanizing effect. They often have to, they don't have clean clothes, they don't have proper toilets to go to, they're not fed properly, they lose weight, they get diseases, they start to lose their dignity. They lose the appearance of dignity. And it's much easier for their guards, for the people abusing them, to do that because they don't look human anymore. They don't act human anymore. They don't sound human. So the state brings them in and says, do what you will. This is not a person. This is an animal. And then they do things to them to make them look more like that, to brutalize them. And I want us all to be very careful in the images that we hear, the things we hear about looting, about violence in Gaza. I want us all to imagine if Belleville was under siege, if there was no food here, if everyone who lives here, your neighbors, the good people, the bad people, the people who try to organize, the people who just look out for themselves, they're all desperate, they're all fighting for food. What would Belleville look like? We would have people who are the perfect victim, who if they were on TV, they could speak well, they could still maintain some dignity. But we wouldn't all be like that. Some of us would act in ways that normally we wouldn't. So I just want us to be aware that there are conditions that you can put human beings into where their civility, their niceness, their perfect hero or perfect victim state is going to break down. And that doesn't mean they're not human. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be defended. It doesn't mean we're not on their side. They have the right to have rights, and that's why we're here today. Does anybody have a question? Anything that you heard or that you might be thinking about? And if not, that's great. We'll just go on. Yes, Kale.
I think you were talking about previously the challenges of refeeding.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. That's an excellent point. Right now we hear about dribs and drabs of food getting in, and it's very disappointing. Not nearly enough to refeed the population, but we're also in a situation where many, many, many babies and young children and people are in a state of malnourishment where you can't just give them pasta or rice and lentils and they're going to recover. These folks, these kids, babies, children, they're beyond that. They need special refeeding centers. They need those centers to be sanitary, safe. They need professionals. They need proper protocols. They need the refeeding of forced mass starvations in history. I mean, they all have their own unique things, right? Like in Canada, we can think about how the bison, the source of food, was wiped out in the prairies, basically causing a starvation for Plains Indigenous people, forcing them to accept treaties and reservations that normally they would not have. We can think about some famous sieges, like the siege of Leningrad in World War II, where the German army besieged Leningrad. There was a huge starvation within Leningrad. We can also think about there was actually early in the Second World War, the Nazis came up with a plan, and this was interesting. I can give you a bit more context. When I knew I was going to do this talk, I did a little extra reading. So thanks for your questions. You're helping me get some of the things that I prepared for. There's a very good book called Mass Starvation that you can get from your library by an American professor named Alex DeWall. He published it in 2017, so before this event that we're witnessing now. But through his lifetime, he's been a scholar of mass starvations and famines. And his book's about it, what happens, what causes them, what are the harm reduction things that can happen. It's an excellent book. So one of the cases that he brings up in that book, one of the things that the Nazis had learned from the First World War was that to survive a long war, you had to be able to feed your home population. The Allies in the First World War had been more effective in blockading and keeping food out of Germany than the Germans had been in keeping food out of France and England. Both of them were trying to blockade food from the other side. So when the Second World War started, one of the things the Nazis wanted to do early on was invade the Ukraine. They wanted to get a hold of the great agricultural lands in the Ukraine, basically to harvest the food and get that food back to the population in Germany. They did not care at all about whether the Ukrainians lived or died. In fact, part of their plan was it would be better if Ukrainians died because it would be fewer mouths to feed. But it was a big plan. It was very difficult to execute. They were partially able to execute it, but that was their plan. Now, on another thing that's maybe more shameful to us, because it happened on the Allied side, was that Winston Churchill made a decision to blockade a large part of the Indian coast to keep Japanese ships from coming on into India. And one of the things about that was that thousands of Bengali fishermen along the coast who supported themselves and their local populations with fishing were unable to do that. There was a very large famine in Bengal, totally brought on by that Allied strategy of diverting food from the colonies to England to help the home population survive the war. And tens and tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people, Bengali people, died of starvation. And the British government knew it. It was a choice. So that's another example in the last 100 years. Okay, I know there's people in the audience who would like to bring a poem or say something. Now's your opportunity. And thanks for your support. I also just want to say, I got really nervous coming up and talking like this. But as everyone here was gathering and I saw your faces and who was here, I felt this collective sense of support, and I think we have that for each other, and I'm grateful to you for that. And I think I'm one of those people who would be at home not knowing what to do if I didn't see what you folks are doing and getting support. You know, that shared sense of support. I think we keep each other going, and our own momentum hopefully will bring other people into raising their voices and doing more. And anyways, hopefully we can make a change.
I have a poem that is written by someone in Gaza, and it's called When Silence Starves. And it is by Ruba Khalid Al-Falit. I'm not used to reading from a phone, so please bear with me. When silence starves. No food remains, only the rumble of empty stomachs, louder than bombs, more relentless than drones. Our bodies have withered to shadows, ribs jut like broken wings, as if our chests yearn to escape what we've become. Burn-boned, starving, trapped in a cage forged by war. Men falter mid-sentence, words unraveling. Women break bread into ghost-thin slivers. And the children, they no longer play. Joy demands calories they don't have. They sit in corners, limbs folded like broken vows, eyes wide yet dulled. Mothers stir empty pots, serving nothing with whispered apologies. They season it with songs, but the children are too weary to pretend. Plates stand barren, shelves echo their emptiness. The world, too, feels hollow, unanswering when we cry out. We faint now, quietly, without fanfare. It's what happens when the body exhausts even the will to stand. And when the world begins to hear the growl of our hunger, they rush to drown it. Bombs roar louder to silence our stomachs. They hold meetings not to feed us, but to feed illusions. Ceasefire, they say, meaning delay. Negotiation, they claim, meaning nothing. They stage hope like a play, just enough to keep us dreaming of bread, just enough to hush the world. Not peace, not aid, just silence in disguise. Yet still we dream. Dreaming is the last right they haven't stolen. In Gaza, a loaf of bread is no mere meal. It's a miracle, a flag, a defiant declaration that we are still here. When the world asks, what does hunger sound like? Tell them, it sounds like Gaza, where even silence starves.
Peace up on all of you and on the world as well too. So I am not a person who could speak in public, but I actually chose to pick a picture just off the posts and maybe just looking at their eyes and find my courage. Because therefore, these are the human beings that everyone actually is not seeing them like. So I'm gonna talk to you. My wife asked me, are you gonna prepare something to read? The answer was no. What are you gonna say? Whatever the chapter in my heart says. What page? Page 1. And what is that? I chose to start with being just a simple human being. Now, as a human being, as you all know, how old is the world? Nobody knows. We can guess. But guess what? Humanity was born before any religion, anything that ever existed. Humanity was born. So therefore, what is our differences? What is the something that we have in common? So if you look at our differences, it's few. And what are they? Color, faith, and what else? Maybe culture here and there, language, and that's it. But what is the things that we have in common with? You get cut, you bleed red. You feel something and your heart beats for. You like what your heart's like. So therefore, makes us so much we have in common, and we're human. So therefore, every human has existed to be related. You guys are all my sisters and my brothers and my mothers and my fathers. But one thing we have to keep in mind that, something I was wondering, what am I gonna say? And I looked at you and you gave me a thought, thanks to you. And I am terrible with names, terrible. So if I remember one of your names, you'll be lucky. And the thing is, I was wondering, okay, so where do we start? What do we say? What do we do? So a genocide that is happening now. Well, let's forget about that one for now, just a minute. Now, if I told you back in the day that actually the natives of this country has been slaughtered, you'll be like, I wish I was there at that time to stop them. Well, guess what? The native in Africa gets slaughtered. I wish I was there to be able to stop it. Or there's many nations before our time, even you could go back to 20,000 years ago, and you'll wish that you were there, and therefore you stopped it. But guess what? In black and white, Holocaust happened, and we all wished that we were there to stop it. No kids deserve to die. No human deserves to die at any cost. Not for the cost of money, not the cost for oil, not for the cost of anything. Because who is killing us? And that's what we need to understand. But guess what? Today, there is a genocide. And you have the right to stop it. And guess what? You could be on board. This is not that Titanic where it's going to sink in the middle of the Atlantic. This is, you could call it whatever you want to call it. A jet, a plane, a train. But you should be on board. Because the children of Gaza, same as every child out there in the world, not just Gaza, every child out there in the world, guess what? They deserve to live. I am married and I have 2 children. It saddens me as a father to see my children's eating with full stomach, and it aches my heart. And the children of Gaza are begging for food. And guess what? I come from Lebanon, and I was born in 1976. The day I was born, my father got shot, and then therefore I was just breastfed by my neighbor. I happened to be lucky. And then my mother took care of my father. But I have seen starvation. Till the day I left the country in 1996, it was still bombing. But my mom used, God bless her soul, she passed, but she used a white lie. When we used to be hungry, she used to actually give us a pita, the roll, and she used to tell us, guess what? Eat it. And we're not allowed to open it, but we used to eat it, and it tastes good. We're like, whoa. She used to say that's a sweet. Until one day we grew older, and she told us the trick. Doctor, you were right. It was water on a pita with sugar. And honest to God, it was the best thing we ever ate because we had nothing else to eat except it, so it tasted good. So what I was going to say, I've seen starvation not as much as the people in Gaza, not as much. But I'll tell you something, you can make the difference. And I heard one thing where it says, our numbers are little, and these are the same people support us. But bear witness, God knows, about your effort. And that what you're trying to do, it will count. There will never be a seed that was planted without a tree growing and many fruits on it. Why don't you, please, for the sake of the human beings, if you look at the picture in my hands, their eyes, plant a seed, no matter what, and that seed will be, is use every source that you have. Peaceful source, because we're peaceful people. We're human beings, just to make an impact on every single media out there, every single person out there, every single human, if there is a humanity left in anyone, to answer the people of Gaza. And I cherish the little kids that's there. They could have been playing by choice. They chose to come with their parents to listen. And I cherish every effort of all of you. Now, some people may say, well, we can pray for them. Guess what? Moses before you prayed, but God ordered him to go for the Pharaoh of his time and challenge him to let his people go. So therefore, I ask you that all of you could be doing exactly what Moses did. All what you gotta do, we gotta go to the pharaohs of our time. These are the people that are allowing the war to continue and starvation to happen. And stop it, because one day we will stand in front of God. It doesn't matter what God we believe in. At the end, guess what? I'm going to make you laugh. When we stand in front of God, we're going to be looking all confused. So call them this name, so call them this name, so call them this name. And at the end, they're going to look at us like, whoa, it took you so long to know who I am. As long as you believe in a high supreme being, even if you don't believe that God exists, but you do exist and we exist, and that's mean we're the same kind, we bleed the same, we feel the same, we love the same, so we're all humans. Doesn't matter our colors, it doesn't matter our language, doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is this must stop, and it's in our time must stop. So I thank you for listening, and I personally urge every single one of you, for the sake of these eyes, they look roughed up. But trust me, if you dress them, they will replace the moon in the sky. And trust me with that. There is no way in the world, if you had one passion for human beings to let actually not a drop of tear, just looking at them. And the sad part is, I'll tell you what, Israel is not only who's responsible for that. Yes, they started the genocide. So the surrounding countries who is doing nothing about it. And I come from these surrounding countries. They're all infested. And then guess what? The people must rise. Don't wait for them. Because if you wait for them, there will never be one of them left. We can make that difference. And you, my brother and my sisters, in humanity, forget about faith. Don't look at them as Muslims or Christian or Jews. Look at them as a human being. Regardless to our differences, there is one thing that keeps us connected and caring for one another is a humanity. I love you from my heart, regardless to what's the effort or regardless what you're gonna do about it. But I only urge you to be that seed. Put that seed today. Put it in your children's. Educate. Go. Brother Shahid inspired me so much. Every time I pass by Highway 62, and then just by the 401, and I see a gentleman standing, snowing, raining, and I'm like, I should be ashamed. He's trying to make a difference, but I actually could not sleep no more because of him. He has awakened my conscience, and I hope every single human will have some conscience, because if it happens to us at home here, then what do? Then we must actually stand and say, enough. I thank you from my heart, and I think I have said enough.
The next 7 generations. This is why I sing. This is why I dance. The next 7 generations. This is why I pray. This is why I sacrifice. This is why I stand up and fight. This is the teachings of my people. I learned to stand young, to sacrifice my heart in battle and confrontation, to live in defense of our hearts, of life, our mother, the earth, for the next 7 generations of all our relations. I faced arrest, not always bravely, to say no, settler colonialism. Enough is enough. My children's futures will not lay in peril. Not this time, not anymore. I learned what it means to fight for the next 7. I thought I knew. I thought that's what I was doing as I stood in the depths of settler hate, as I stood in the depths of Indigenous self-hate and respectability, as I stood and declared my intention to protect my children from this fight. But I can't protect my children today in a stand for 7 generations. I can't protect my children and protect their grandchildren's grandchildren. Not when our invaders believe their invasion is just and holy, a beacon of light everlasting. Oh, Canada. Yesterday, my child went off to fight to protect the next 7 generations. This is what it means to protect 7 generations. We sacrifice ourselves and our children. This is a warrior's pain, to send your child off to battle. I thought I battled so they wouldn't have to. I thought I cried in pain to save them. I thought every broken bone, every scar to my soul was to save my child from a warrior's scars. The babe I nursed faced a gun yesterday. A 40-year-old settler with a sniper and a cop badge. Some 19-year-old natives protecting the children they might never have. Some 19-year-old natives standing down a steel giant. Live feeds playing across the country. Settlers calling for my child's death. Death by train, death by cops' bullets. My child standing between their friend and a state sniper. Protect the next 7. These were my words to them as they left to defend their people. Protect the next 7. These are my words to myself as I sacrifice my child, my babe, my love to this fight. Protect the next 7, and please, creation, protect this one. These poems make me think of the parents in Palestine, both Gaza and the West Bank, protecting their bigger children who are big enough to fight back. And I thought that was important to remember those children as well as the little ones. I'm going to do the one I wrote for my youngest. I have not read it as much as the next 7 generations because I feel guilty reading it sometimes in the promise to fight harder, because in the last 3 or 4 years I fought less, and but I think it's also important to face our guilt, and so here is the poem for my youngest, a poem for my Hoaxila. Hush, our sweet Hoaxila, listen to our lullaby. Ah, hey, oh, yea, well, yea. We pray sweet dreams come tonight, dreams of days ahead, where we hold you tight, play, read you stories, and teach you of our dreams. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila, listen to our lullaby. Ah, hey, whoa, yea, well, yea. I pray sweet dreams come tonight, wash away the pain of missing your dad. I can't bring him back. Sorry, my sweet Hoaxila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila, listen to my lullaby. Ah, hey, whoa, yea, well, yea. I pray sweet dreams come tonight. Replace your concerns as settlers celebrate with scary noises, their flag that brings us genocide. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila, listen to my lullaby. Ah, hey, oh, yea, well, yea. I pray sweet dreams come tonight. Erase your fears after you saw the bruises the cops gave me. Sorry, my sweet Hoaxila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila, listen to my lullaby. Shante washte Hoaxila, keashte ma. I pray sweet dreams come tonight, lift you above the pain of seeing your people asleep on the streets, homes stolen. Sorry, my sweet Hoaxila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila, listen to my lullaby. Unhappy P-wash day, I pray sweet dreams come tonight. Blood in your mind after seeing your sister taken to hospital. Ants hushing around her. Sorry, my sweet Hoaxila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila. Listen to my lullaby. Shante washte Hoaxila, keashte ma. I pray sweet dreams come tonight. Wipe away your tears after those settler kids made fun of you, kicked you, stole your juice. Sorry, my sweet Hoaxila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila, listen to my lullaby. Unhappy P-wash day, I pray sweet dreams are still possible for you tonight. You saw the news for the first time. Guns removing family from their lands. Sorry, my sweet Hoaxila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hoaxila. Listen to my lullaby. Ah, hey, oh, yeah. I pray you remember to have dreams that aren't nightmares. I'm sorry we had to run so hard, ignored your questions and cries. Sorry, my sweet Hosila. I know I promised you more. Tomorrow, I'll fight harder. Hush, my sweet Hosila. Listen to my lullaby. Ah, hey, oh, yeah, way, oh, yeah. I pray your dreams end tonight. I'm so tired. I haven't slept. Comforting your dreams at night, your fears, your reality. Sorry, my sweet Hoxila. I know I promised you more, and you're only 6. Tomorrow you can fight by our side with those whose dreams are also stolen. Hush, my sweet Hoxila. Listen to the lullaby. Ah, hey, oh, yeah, way, oh, yeah. Ah, hey, oh, yeah, way, oh, yeah. Shante, washte, hoxina. Que este ma unhappy be washed day way lo ye Shante washte hoxina que este ma unhappy be washed day way lo ye way lo ye way lo ye. Okay. The next 2 are more about how I feel after it hurts. A myth called peace on my land and yours. This one's not blown up, so I might use my glasses. Invaders came and stole the land. We wanted to stop them. Savages, they called us, as they ripped the scalps from our head and told us to desire peace. When they marched our ancestors from their homes on death marches on dusty roads, just like they did your own, our people were told behave, aspire for peace, or meet the butt of a gun. When the pipelines were laid down, when the walls went up, those who tore them down were called terrorists for disrupting the peace. When the bombs fell and white phosphorus rained, peace was called. We are all told it will bring change. But peace didn't stop them from stealing the land. Peace didn't stop them from demolishing the homes. Peace didn't stop them from building the walls. Peace didn't stop them from trying to kill us all. Now every time I hear peace, I believe they mean the peace that will come when our voices are silenced once and for all. There shall be no peace until all of settler colonialism falls. The next one is called Muhammad Said Dream Dangerously. One of my closest friends is Muhammad Abdu, and in 2013 he came and found me and he said, I want Idle No More and support Palestinian human rights to join up. And we started a vast friendship. Some of you may know him if you watched the American news where he was fired by Columbia on international news for his support for Palestine. So this poem is dedicated to my friend Muhammad, and it's called Muhammad Said Dream Dangerously. One of my dearest friends taught me to dream dangerously. Relief washed over me. My mind awoke instantly, like bolting upright from sleep over the idea of the freedom of what I could dream. I was so tired of dreaming of my liberation under colonial terms. I was so exhausted of dreaming of your liberation under colonial terms. I won't do it anymore. I will not dream within the confines of safety for the settler. I will not dream safety for the protection of white land, property, and religion. I will not dream within the confines of a democracy that has only ever been a cover to serve the settler majority. Not anymore. From here on out, I dream dangerously. I dream to feel the freedom of the heroes of Alaska flood flying over the walls of apartheid to liberate the land from the scourge of settler colonialism. This is freedom. This is the freedom my ancestors must have felt flying on horseback across the plains, ears whipped out behind them, calling all the spirits as they launched forward on magical beings that would help them launch their arrows full force straight ahead, wiping out settler colonialism one at a time. This is the taste of freedom I tasted as I felt running through bush and weed and swamp to bring supplies to the warriors of the Orca resistance. We didn't liberate ourselves yet. Palestine hasn't liberated themselves yet. But I dream dangerously because it is a dream that will see the moment when we fly towards liberation and feel the freedom of fighting for our people on our lands. The strength to dream dangerously about this is how we achieve liberation. Settlers have always told me to dream safely. They say it will never happen in your lifetime. It's impossible. It can't be done. What about me? What about my home? What about my life that I built on your stolen land? I don't fucking care anymore. I haven't cared since October, be that 1492 or 2023. I don't care. I have one dream, and my dream is liberation from the river to the sea. My dream is liberation from sea to shining sea to shining sea. All Indigenous land must be free. All my relations.
For introducing me. I wish I could live up to the compliments that you give me. I appreciate that. My name is Muhammad Iqbal. I'm a retired professor. Yeah, I'm a retired professor. And I'm 70 plus. I have been, ever since my childhood, I've been listening to and watching the stories of Palestine. I remember seeing the map of Palestine way back about 50 years ago. It used to be a full map that we all know, the boundaries of Israel. Then I heard reports and witnessed on the TV the stories of massacre of Sabra and Shatila. Then I listened to the reports of war between Arabs and Israel, Arab neighbors, in which a lot of territory was taken over, including West Bank, Golan Heights, and the entire peninsula of Sinai, which were of course retaken by Egyptian forces later on. And the story continues on, which has now culminated into a very drastic and heart-wrenching story of genocide, ethnic cleansing, genocide, and forced starvation. When I watch these news on the TV, I simply can't listen to these reports anymore. Sometimes I have to change the channel, and sometimes I have to shut the TV off because it's so painful, it's so heart-wrenching. And I've been watching these for so many years. And I turned the channel off because I know what's coming up next. It's the same old story of ethnic cleansing, genocide, starvation. It's one of the sad chapters of human history, never seen them. One of the speakers actually mentioned about the dropping of atomic bomb on Hiroshima. That was a war crime. Yes, it was. But then there is another war crime similar to those we are witnessing right now, happening in the territory of Palestine. We all have been watching with so much helplessness. We can't do much about it. because the world has changed its morality. The philosophy or the strategy of might is right has taken away the forces of resistance. The majority of the world population cannot do anything. We all watch in helplessness, with a passive attitude of not able to do anything. But there is one thing that we can do, and that is that we can speak up. Just like we are here today, we can speak up, raise our voice, although we are very few people, but we can raise our voices, try and make it heard to the echelons of power in Canada and abroad, of course. So I'm glad that Brother Shahad and his group has initiated some petitions, and I have signed those petitions. I'm sure all of you have signed those. What we can do is perhaps keep on this momentum and try and make our voices loud and clear. Tell them that we are here we're determined to stop this suppression and cruelty that is happening out there. And at the same time, I'm not sure if anybody can update me on this. There was a Canadian military attempt of airdrop of foods in Gaza, and the week prior to that, there were some airdrops from some other nations as well. So I'm not sure what happened to that. Is this a continuation of some activity? Are there any Canadian foods being dropped further, or was that the only one? So I think maybe if there is a petition that we are going to write, maybe we can try and force the Canadian government to at least continue those kind of airdrop operations in the Gaza territory. So I hope that the petition that we are signing make any difference. And at this point, I would strongly suggest that should be added into the petitions that the Canadian government, now that they have started the airdrop of foods into Gaza, they should continue on this operation. So that's what I have to say. Any comments, questions? Thank you.
Hello, I won't speak very long. It's just that I think we all need to learn how to speak. And so I'm doing this for the first time. I'm not emotional. I ran out of emotions long ago, too much outrage. I first found out about what's happening in Israel 1985, around then. Went to a forum in Boston where there was a Palestinian woman and an Israeli woman who was a lawyer defending Palestinians. I was horrified by what I learned. I got some literature at the table, and even more shocked by the nature of the occupation, demolishing homes, the complete humiliation people were suffering. And most people in our society have no idea that this is going on. And I started to realize that we can't imagine. It's like we're in two different worlds. That world there and this world here. And yet there is a common denominator. I wanted to start by offering a solution. It's an obvious solution, at least it seems obvious to me, and that's a single state where people have equal rights regardless of race, religion, or ethnicity. In other words, a return to the Palestine that existed before the Zionists came. The Palestine that existed for 1,000 years, where Muslims and Jews and Christians were living in peace together up to about 1919. And this would be in accord with Canadian principles and American principles, equal rights for all. Who could disagree with that? And the problem is we don't abide by our principles. Our rulers don't follow them. It's like freedom and democracy is a big facade. And if we would live by what we preach, it would be so different. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to offer a solution. Thank you.
Trying to say
Tu sei lontana, sogno all'orizzonte, manca le parole. E io sì lo so che sei con me, oh mia luna, tu sei qui con me. Mio sole, tu sei qui con me, con me, con me, con me. Time to say goodbye. Paesi che non ho mai vissuto con te. Adesso si vivrà con te. Partirò. Sono navi per mari che io lo so, non esistono più. Con te io vivrò, con te partirò. Sono navi per mari che io lo so.
Nice to meet you. That's good.
If you're brown.
We're with you.
Personally.
I'm with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace.
Maybe it's 612.
Yeah, that's right.
And what's gonna happen to to the people that maybe are still alive, but that are starving? What's gonna happen to them? I mean, the early time when we
My second battery is dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't just let ourselves.
In the small scale now, it's about games. You can get close to many I mean, adults. Right. You learn those four things anyway. Like,
I'm gonna learn.
you will speak.
I know, but
Yeah. And be able to communicate. Speak. You have a word into your speech that every one of your
One thing. Today is just my little garden where I have some this year. Couple 30.
wherever you want.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to remind everyone, we mentioned arms embargo now. I know a lot of people will feel like there's not a lot that you individually feel you can do. You know that the Canadian state is complicit, but how exactly we can kind of put pressure, it can get quite overwhelming. So armsembargonow.ca is one excellent place to start. It's had a lot of traction in recent weeks. Just late last month, there was a report out, one of many reports, but the most recent report demonstrating that the Canadian government's commitment of the cessation of arms shipments to Israel remains invalid. There are still component parts of weapons and military supplies that are exiting Canada and ending up in Israel, despite this Liberal government's commitment that this would not happen. In fact, we have seen since 2023, not just that it has continued, but that it is accelerating. This is why we say that this is a Canadian issue, and this is why we as Canadian citizens are culpable in this genocide, and why we hold the Canadian state accountable. The Canadian state does not allow arms shipments to Russia, to many states that it feels it is in opposition to, but it does allow Canadian companies to export goods and services to Israel that are either in direct use against the Palestinians in the violence, as well as goods and services that are being exported for use in occupied West Bank that is internationally recognized as an occupation. And under Canadians' international treaties, we have agreed that we would not do economic business with an illegal occupation, and yet we continue to do. So you can learn more about that at armsembargo.ca, armsembargonow.ca. And I am here as a member of Belleville for Justice and Peace. I also do work with Labor for Palestine. If you are a member of a union and you would like to grapple with this issue within your union, whether you see the union acting in problematic ways, not defending anti-Palestinian racism, or just want to learn more about how your pension may be invested in the same weapons companies and occupation infrastructure, reach out. Labor for Palestine is something you can Google. You can learn information there. If you reach out to Shahid, he will definitely get you in contact with me. Labor for Palestine does not have a lot of penetration in this area, but there is a chapter in Kingston, and there's always the opportunity to connect you with caucus members from your union or your sector of the economy elsewhere in Canada, people who are doing that organizing work. So none of these individual things is going to stop the genocide from happening, but it's every one of us doing what we can in the communities that we have access to demonstrate that this is not acceptable to us. Thank you.
How much, question? How much has Canada given? How much aid has Canada given to Israel?
How much aid Canada is given to Israel?
So off the top of my head, just to give you an example, in 2023, Canada approved $23 or $28 million in military arms shipments. These are not, this is not like hospital materials for the military. This is like actual components and that are used in weapons, bombs, small weapons. in 2023, it was 28 million. That number surpassed all previous years cumulatively. Okay, and then the Canadian state has committed to not do that anymore, but numerous reports have come out. For example, Canada is not classifying as an export to Israel components that are first shipped to the United States for further assembly, which are then shipped to Israel. From the Canadian government's position, this is not an arms export to Israel, it's an arms export permit approval to the United States. Likewise, any company that had a pre-existing 3 or 4 year approved permit that permit was not recalled. The Canadian government simply is not issuing new permits, but they are allowing existing permits to continue. So these arms exports continue, and yes, it is quite troubling.
I didn't really prepare anything because I wasn't sure if I could make it today. I just got done work, and I work in the morning, so I'm not here for very long. But it is something that I am very seriously involved in. I remember, I think it was 2 weeks after October 7th, and I'm a healthcare worker. And so it's very, I take it very personally when I see images of bombed hospitals and ambulances shredded to, unrecognizable shards of metal, and doctors, nurses, healthcare aides, workers, paramedics bombed, targeted purposefully. I take that very personally as a healthcare worker. And so about 2 weeks after October 7th, I came to Market Square with a sign that said, "Stop the violence, ceasefire now." And I wasn't aware that there were other people in my community at the time that were as affected. It was not very long after that I saw the members of Belleville for Justice and Peace on North Front Street. My sister was actually visiting at the time, and we both have very similar feelings about this situation. And she said, "Oh my God, Darren, look, there's a group." And I said, "We have 10 minutes, let's stop." And we did, and I found my people. I think it's really important to keep our eyes open for like minds and like souls that really feel this in our guts the way we do. And so it was really something to go from being a lone protester here at this square 2 weeks after October 7th to then finding this rich community of like-minded people. So I really value that. I want to talk very briefly about what my sister does in Yellowknife. It's YK Citizens for Peace. And they are very, very active. They have held fundraisers. Yellowknife is a very international community, unlike Belleville. And so you get people from all around the world visiting Yellowknife, staying there, living there, working there for some period of time. And as kind of a more global city, I think they have a citizenry that is at least a little more in tune with what's happening around the world. And they have done mass organizations in concert with people in Gaza and sent money and aid to numerous families. So check them out. They actually have a Facebook page. They're very active. everything's more international or something, but specifically that there isn't more things that used to happen to would help to separate. So I don't really have too much more to say. There's a small piece of it, pretty tiny, but it overlaps a little bit. I think maybe it's a picture. Lines of your line, of the light that you find. No height is strong. What a band plays well. The action that also plays well. I think you have to be aware of the instances that I think you have to be aware of the highs of your own time. Very repeating highs. And so I just have to thank you. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate seeing you guys.
Trying to say Quando sei lontana sogno all'orizzonte e manca le parole. E io sì lo so che sei con me, oh mia luna, tu sei qui con me. Mio sole, tu sei qui con me, con me, con me, con me. Time to say goodbye. Paesi che non ho mai amato e vissuto con te. Adesso si vivrò con te. Partirò. Su navi per mari, e io lo so, non esistono più. Con te io vivrò, con